TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop, come on, baby, higher. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for Tea Time Wagers with, of course, the star of the show, Mr. Brady Kannon. You can catch him on the Twitter, or X, at LasVegasGolfer, and of course on SportsGrid. And you can catch his written work on PG at the PGA, but he'll talk all about that, of course, later. Shout out to our proud partners and sponsorships. Of course, it's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play where you download the apps. It's free. And from there, we will take over, I promise you. Travis, Zach, myself, Amber, Holly, Jay, the list is endless. Get on board before the train leaves the station. And a shout out to Viva Tequila Seltzer, brand new flavor last week, coconut. Head on where you get your beverages, sports bars, casinos, sporting events, live, Celtics, Bruins. Come on down. Tell them JD from ECSI sent you. So without further ado, let's bring in the star of this show, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, good to be with you again. You know, I love the addition there of your sponsorship, your partnership with Viva. And it's interesting, all of the connections we have with Viva here this week. Of course, I'm in Las Vegas, Viva Las Vegas. And this week, the Olympics is in France, Viva la France. And you mentioned their new flavor, coconut. Well, I was just in Hawaii. So, I like the bizarre love triangle of all the different connections we have here with Viva. This is a perfect timing.
And comically, CT Bets and the rest of that team at Viva, unscripted there, so a shout out to Mr. Brady Kannon. Next time you see him, make sure you take care of him with a few Vivas there. Olympics, we're going to get into the Olympics, of course. We're going to break down the odds. I have DraftKings in front of me now. We have talked endlessly. Yesterday over the phone, we talked backstage, different strategies. I'm a numbers guy, and I use two sources, and then we talked to Jeffrey Benson. I use DraftKings, but strictly a numbers guy. I don't think numbers come into play when we're talking Olympics here. Country pride. We've talked about the defending champ XANDER Schauffele, 2020 gold medalist, which kind of propelled him 4 years later to two majors and stuff. But we're going to get to that. I want to go back to the PGA. Last weekend, the 3M, Mr. Johnny Vegas. Last time he won 7 years ago, but it's in that mid to late July where he's had the greatest success. Pre-flop as high as 90-1. I think he closed around 60, 65. I saw some 70s out there. We talked on SportsGrid Saturday night. You talked about the flat stick. Will it hold tight? I think Adam Kaufman had a top 10, I think it was, or maybe even a top 20. But thoughts on the weekend? Thoughts on Johnny Vegas and the 3M?
Yeah, kicking myself a little bit. He was one of the guys on my list that certainly made sense last week. And you know how it is. You can't bet them all, and you pick a handful of guys or whatever. And I looked back at my notes, and I said, yeah, he made all the sense in the world. But yeah, I didn't know. It was surprising. And hats off to Johnny Vegas. I've always been a fan of the guy. I love his demeanor. He's got a great smile. Just seems like a really cool guy. He's got an incredible story, too. The way he made it to the United States, went to the University of Texas, and became a professional golfer. Very successful professional golfer, by the way. But the putter is always worrisome with Johnny V. And I didn't know if it would hold up on Sunday in the final round. And I think the case I made going into that final round, you had Matt Kuchar and Jonathan Vegas 1 and 2 on the leaderboard. And after one hole, they had swapped positions. Kuchar was in the lead or after 2 holes, rather. Kuchar made a birdie on number 2 and Vegas made a bogey on number 1. We had switched positions just like that. And basically the odds flipped to exactly what they were prior to the tournament kicking off as well. And I thought, okay, here we go. And it came again, around the 13th hole when you had 4 guys tied for the lead and Vegas had made a couple of bogeys there. A couple of blemishes there on the card. And I said, okay, I think this is going to play out. And then it didn't. Vegas was able to collect himself and get it back together, but he was so hot with the putter. And this is a guy that went into the 3M Open ranking 171st on the PGA Tour for strokes gained putting. Johnny Vegas is always a guy that pans out in the numbers. When you have these lesser known tournaments with a watered down field, Johnny Vegas always looks attractive. And especially when total driving or driving of the golf ball is at a premium. That's probably his greatest strength. He's really good at that. So he made a lot of sense at this tournament again, where we've seen a lot of long ball hitters have success. But the putter really surprised me. Going into the final round on Sunday, he was gaining over 4 strokes on the field with the putter through the first 3 days and was 7th in the field for strokes gained putting. This is a guy that, let's call him an awful putter. And he was having a red hot week. And then you got Matt Kuchar, who was the number 1 player in the field, tee to green and on strokes gained approach. His irons were on fire and he couldn't putt. He was ranked 60th in the field in strokes gained putting. And conversely, this is a guy that ranks 23rd on tour, a very good putter in Kuchar. So I'm like, this has got to play out where Kuchar's going to find his putting stroke and it's going to slip for Vegas. And it looked like that was going to happen. Then it didn't. So, congrats to Vegas. There was a lot of guys that I knew. One of my friends over at SportsGrid, Keith Stewart, was on Vegas. He had a heck of a week. He hit the woman on the LPGA Tour as well. 2 outrights in 1 week for him. I saw a couple other guys that jumped on Johnny Vegas this week. So, yeah, like I say, he often makes sense in these fields that don't have so much star power. And boy, these guys nailed it this week with JV.
We talk here every Wednesday at 5 o'clock, and we talk at length how hard it is to win a tournament pre-flop. We're sticking our necks out there. We're doing all the research, and I talked to our ECSI VIPs, and I was like, for every major that we release, we're still staying on top of the daily sports, but it's 2 weeks of constant data research, and for you, every day, week to week, each course, new settings, who's in, who's out, numbers, yada, yada, yada. My point is, you can lead someone to water. We can't make them drink. So when we close the show, what do I say? You say where you can find your written work. Come watch me on SportsGrid at 7 o'clock, at 10 o'clock. Come catch me on the weekends. And my point here is you've had great success in-game. We've had great success as well in-game. And perfect transition here is to the live, where you've had great pre-flop success. But where I'm going with this is you're on the SportsGrid. You gave out a couple live golfers to us on Wednesday. Tell the world what you did after the first round, and you announced it to the world. I was high-fiving the whole SportsGrid crew because everyone had Mr. John Rahm at the live, whether it was pre-flop or after the first round in-game, however it worked.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, my colleague over there, Mike Carver, had John Rahm pre-tournament. And then I added him after the first round, and I said so on air. I was on Game Time Decisions with Joe Ranieri, and he piggybacked as soon as I said it. He's like, "Yep, I'm putting it in right now," because and Jeff, you are so good at reading like the Circa board and what the odds maker's trying to tell you, and I took a little of that from you. In trying to read what the live board was telling me after round one. Jon Rahm got out to a lead, and I liked Jon Rahm. I loved how he played at the Open. It's the first major this year where he hasn't been a royal struggle. He finished top 10. He finished 7th at Royal Troon, and it's like, okay, this is starting to look like Jon Rahm again. Not much travel there. Just went over to England, from Scotland to England. We know he's finished top 10 in every live event this year. And I saw him get out to that hot start. I go, okay, here we go. And the odds, he was like plus 150, and the next closest guy was like 10-1. I said, the book is begging me to take someone else other than Jon Rahm. And it got pretty darn sweaty there for a minute, but eventually he came through. So yeah, hats off to you, and thank you for that. You know, what you've helped me, help teach me there in reading the board and where the odds makers are going. And then, you know, I didn't land on Rahm pre-tournament, but he was certainly there on my radar. And when I saw what he did in that first round, I jumped in. And yeah, you're right. I said so live on SportsGrid. So hopefully some people were listening and jumped on Rahm with us.
Olympics. Xander Schauffele, I mean, would be a storybook. You know, Hollywood couldn't write this script here. 2 majors. Defend the gold medal. I mean, what more would you need to add to the resume heading towards the FedEx Cup soon? Right now on DraftKings, Scotty Scheffler plus 330, Xander plus 550, Rory plus 750, Jon Rahm plus 900, Colin Morikawa plus 900, Ludwig Oberg plus 1200. Then you get into the 2000s with Fleetwood Neiman, Victor Hovland, Tom Kim, Shane Lowry at plus 2,800, and I'll end with Corey Connors at 3,000. A whole different mindset, I think, when you're trying to tackle and the Olympic medals, where some of the stars will shoot for gold, and not to poo-poo a silver or a bronze, but they're going for one thing only, and that's gold. Give us the mindset, how you tackled your outrights pre-flop here.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting week, and I think it's a really exciting week because you have a tremendous field. You have that international flair, that global feel to this event, and it's the Olympics, and that's all really cool. Now, aside from that, I went through the normal statistical crunch and, you know, tried to break down this golf course and what's going to be important. I came up with driving accuracy trumping driving distance. These fairways are relatively narrow. The rough is really thick. The greens are pretty large. There's a lot of undulation everywhere. I thought one of my friends on Twitter, Ron Kloss, who writes for BetSperts, pointed this out, and I did some research, and it absolutely hit home with me as well. I think if you look at this course, Le Golf National, it's the Albatross course just outside of Paris, about 15 miles outside of Paris. We've seen it a lot. On the European Tour since 1991, they've hosted the Open de France, and in 2018, they hosted the Ryder Cup. He said, in his opinion, it looked kind of like a Florida golf course with a European links touch to it. And with all the water on this golf course, you've got over half the holes that have water in play, a lot of sand bunkers in the neighborhood of 60 sand bunkers, no trees really. And then you have that undulation and that European linkscious feel to it. And I think that's a really good comparison. Taking, you know, a Florida course and going over and put it somewhere in Europe, you know, not necessarily a seaside links, but we do have all that water. And so, I thought that was a pretty good way to spin it this week. It's also, let's not rely too heavily on how people performed at the Ryder Cup. I think it's a factor, the Ryder Cup in 2018. But that course was really juiced to favor the Europeans. This course is short. It's less than 7,200 yards. So in order to take that big bombing, power out of the hands of the Americans, the Europeans made this golf course deathly narrow. They grew the rough up real high, they pinched the fairways in, and they just relied on that finesse and that European accuracy, and they kicked our tails. Now, this course is still going to have some of those characteristics, but not quite as extreme as it was for the Ryder Cup. So, you go through all those exercises of looking at what's going to be important this week and the metrics and the stats and strokes gained approach, driving accuracy, bogey avoidance. I think this is not going to be a birdie fest. You're going to want to avoid bogeys. I think it actually compares somewhat with the undulation and the accuracy, the attention towards accuracy. I think it compares with Royal Troon. And kind of that Florida thing, I think it compares with Bay Hill. It's not nearly as long as Bay Hill, but you've got to be accurate. You've got to avoid the rough. You've got to avoid bogeys, and it has these large putting surfaces. Two other courses I used were TPC Scottsdale, the TPC Deer Run, where they play the John Deere, and then also Eastlake Golf Club, where they play the Tour Championship. Those were the correlated courses I used. No, it's hard to find, absolute facsimiles when you're dealing with European tracks, but I think all those make some sense in one way or another as far as layout and what skill sets are going to be important. And then a long answer to a short question there, Jeff. You asked me about, what's different this week. Then you've got the mindset. This does not feel like a major championship. It doesn't feel like a signature event, even though the field would tell you that's the level of prestige here. And a gold medal in the Olympics, it feels more like a Ryder Cup to me, an international competition. And what do we think when we think Ryder Cups? It seems to mean more to the Europeans. And maybe those guys that have not tasted the major championship victory, or have not tasted it this year. I mean, look at Shane Lowry. Lets it slip out of his hands at Royal Troon. Is there a guy that seems to have more pride for Ireland than Shane Lowry? Corey Connors, and you've got the President's Cup in Canada this year. These guys, Colin Morikawa, he's been that close so many times this year, and in majors as well. And he's talked about how he wants to get back to that arena of winning majors and being there on the level with Xander and Scotty. What would be better for Morikawa, like you talked about with Xander, getting home with a gold medal 4 years ago? What would be better for Morikawa than to grab the gold this year? That would be incredible validation, a nice cherry on top to the end of his season. So I handicapped it a couple of different ways: mindset and motivation, and then of course, like you said, all numbers, and you see where you come up, what you come up with after putting that through the ringer.
Paris, is there if I said to you a home court / home field advantage, is there a golfer that's in this field that just plucking out of a hat that you would think would quote unquote have a home field or home country advantage playing this tournament this weekend?
Well, certainly the obvious answer is Victor Perez and Michael Pavone, or Matthew Pavone, rather. I'm sorry. Those are the two gentlemen representing France this week in the competition. Both very good golfers, by the way, who have played this course a number of times in the Open de France, the golf tournament that's been staged here for the last 30 years. Pavone, a winner earlier this season at Torrey Pines. His first year on the PGA Tour, been a DP World Tour player for a long time. Comes over to the PGA, wins at Torrey Pines. Victor Perez he just threatened a few weeks ago. I'm trying to remember what tournament it was, but he was in the mix recently. And his name, he's been at the top of a few leaderboards the last handful of years. He's a very solid player as well. So those guys obviously have an inherent home field advantage. And sometimes that can be a detriment in a golf tournament. And I don't know what it's going to be like. Again, this is different. It could be huge for them here. It's huge for the guys in the Ryder Cup. Now, this, I do not expect at all a Ryder Cup type atmosphere, but that's huge for the Europeans when they play on European soil. And I wonder if it would be a hindrance here, like it sometimes is in the United States. You see these guys, Ryan Palmer playing in the state of Texas or wherever it is, especially when you're doing it for the first time and all your friends and family are bugging you for tickets. Oh, I can't wait for you to come and play in front of everybody, Johnny. And it ends up going south in a hurry because they're like, oh my God, I forgot I have a golf tournament to focus on. So sometimes a home game is not the best thing. It could be a bonus here for Victor Perez and Matthew Pavone. The other two guys that I think could possibly have some support locally are Alex Noren from Sweden and Tommy Fleetwood from England. Both of those guys have had tremendous success at this golf course in the past. They both won here. Fleetwood won the Open de France in 2017. Noren won it in 2018. And they were both on that Ryder Cup in 2018. And they were both heroes. I think it was Noren who clinched the Ryder Cup for the Europeans on Sunday. He went 2-1 in his matches overall for the week. And Fleetwood was a Ryder Cup rookie, and he was the biggest hero on the team. You remember Fleetwood Mac. He and Francesco Molinari swept the board in their matches. Molinari finally lost on Sunday in the singles matches, but he went 4-1 in his matches otherwise. So those guys, you know, probably are endearing to the local fans, and I'm sure you might have some fans there from Sweden and from England that are rooting those two on. Those are two guys that have had tremendous success and maybe made some fans out there in France. And then, of course, the other guys, absolute locals, if you will, in Pavone and Perez.
Shout out to Amber Hawley from WagerWire. Thank you so much for joining us with the US chant, of course. All right, I'm going to put you dead smack center in the fairway, and you can fire away on your outrights and whatever you have left here, sir.
Well, you know, I came up with 4 plays, and then I wanted one more, and then I was speaking with some guys earlier today, and I couldn't help but add 2 more. So I've now got 7 plays in a 60-person field, which is probably a little bit top-heavy. But, hey, let's just cash one, and then everything will be okay. And I really went along the lines of what I was kind of just explaining there in the handicap. Obviously, you look at the numbers. But then also, where does the motivation and the mindset lie? And I started with Morikawa, and I've kind of explained he's been so close this year. I think this is probably a bigger deal to him than it's hard to say that this is a bigger deal to him than it is anybody else. There's no one that's going to toss their gold medal in the garbage because they don't care. This is a big deal. But Scotty has won 6 times this year, including a major. Xander has won 2 majors, including a gold medal already in his career. You just wonder how hell-bent they are on that this is their ultimate priority here right now this week. And I imagine they're trying to convince themselves of that, but is the routine the same? Are the motivational triggers the same? Does everything feel the same for those 2 guys? Whereas other guys in the field that have been oh so close this year, this might just be a little bit extra for them. And that's kind of the way I went with the non-numerical, the anecdotal handicap, if you will. So I think Morikawa makes a lot of sense. And oh, by the way, he's a tremendous fit for this golf course. He's the most accurate guy in the world off the tee, tremendous iron player. The scrambling's great. So he makes sense numerically as well. I don't want a guy that doesn't make sense with the numbers and just going to rely on, you know, the psychological handicap. That'll get you in a lot of trouble in a hurry. But I think Morikawa makes sense. Let's see. Number 2 here, Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm got that taste of victory last week on the LIV circuit. We saw the form start to turn the corner at the Open Championship. And, I mean, that win, you know, he's been through a grind. This transition to LIV for him, I think, has been tough. I think he's second-guessed himself if he made the right choice. And then he finally kicked the door down and won. And I think that meant a lot to him. He was in tears after that win in the UK last week. Now he's going to go out and say, okay, I'm back. I'm Jon Rahm. Don't forget about me. And Scotty and Xander, I'm coming for you. I want to show you that I haven't left. So I think it's a big deal for him. And he's had great success at this golf course. In 2017, he finished 10th at the Open de France. And in 2018, he finished 5th. And then in the Ryder Cup, he went 1-2 in those matches in 2018, but he beat Tiger Woods on Sunday. So I went with Rahm. I think 10-1 or better is a fair price. I got him at 12. I took him right after he won last week. You're not going to find that, I don't think, anymore. You might find an 11. I think you can still find 10. And then I went with Shane Lowry, got him at 27. Again, the pride, he was a flag bearer for Ireland in the opening ceremonies. And he talked about how much he loved that and how much this meant to him. I mean, this guy is, God, if there's ever a bigger candidate for, country pride, who is it other than Shane Lowry? So I think it fits nicely with him letting that Open Championship kind of slip through his fingers. Not really his own fault. Got beaten up pretty good by the weather late on Saturday. And maybe it wouldn't have changed if he even was dealt a good hand with weather, because XANDER ran away from the field on Sunday. But still, that's sitting in his craw a little bit. And here's a chance to kind of make up for that and reconcile with himself. So I think there's a lot of things. And of course, Lowry, ball striker, accurate off the tee, experience here, European. He checks a lot of boxes for me as well. And I mentioned Corey Connors. Connors has been really playing well in Open Championships and the Scottish Open. His links game is really improving. He's made 4 straight cuts at the Open, just finished 25th at Royal Troon. He's made 3 straight cuts at the Scottish Open, and the last 2 years just finished 10th this year and 19th the year before. So I think his links game is really starting to show up. And here we kind of have a little bit of a softer links version, not the full-blown links version that we saw a couple weeks ago at Royal Troon. Tremendous ball striker, tremendously accurate off the tee. It's always about the putter with Corey Connors. But again, I think there's a country pride thing for him as well. And a guy that has finished top 10 in a number of major championships. It's like, okay, I haven't been able to get one, but here's an opportunity to win a freaking gold medal. And I've got Canada and the pride for my country behind me, who's about to hold the President's Cup this fall. And my captain, Mike Weir's watching me. And so there's a lot going on for him. And then the other play, I don't really know how much it has to do with mindset, but it's the guy that has arguably the very most experience at this golf course of anybody in the field. And he's also a very talented player. And he's a long bomb at 70-1. And that's Thomas Dietrich. Thomas Dietrich has not missed a cut in 6 straight starts, and that includes a 14th place finish at the U.S. Open and a 4th place finish at the PGA Championship. He has just recently become a full-time member of the PGA Tour. He used to be on the DP World Tour and has played here in the Open de France 5 times. He's only missed the cut once. He's played 18 rounds here at this golf course, and that is tied with for the most of anybody in this field. And he's had good finishes, too. He's had a top 10 and a top 20. I think he finished 16th one year and 8th another year. So, not only has he made the cut, he's had pretty good finishes as well. And, from what we've seen out of this guy, I talk about his finishes in the 2 majors. He's a comer. By the way, he ranks 8th on the PGA Tour in strokes gained putting. He can really roll the ball with the flat stick. Good player. So 70-1 for a guy that has all that experience. He was kind of more of a bomb flyer for me. Maybe you think about a finish position with him as well. I have played these guys all to win gold. You can bet them all to just be on the podium to win a medal. I've seen top 10, top 5, and top 20 markets out there as well. So you can kind of dabble with that how you wish. Normally here on the show, we do that. We play the outright in the top 20. Again, I said this tournament's different. I didn't really go in all like that this week. I just tried to pick a winner, and maybe that's part of the reason I went with 7 guys instead of, maybe a little lighter load when I'm doing the other bets as well, the head-to-heads and the finish positions and all that. And then, like I said, I talked with some very sharp people this morning, bookmakers and gamblers and what have you, and I understand there's some pretty strong, sharp support out there for Tommy Fleetwood and Joaquin Niemann. And those were guys that were on my radar, the last 2 weeks, ever since I started talking about the Olympics at this golf course. We talked about the success Tommy Fleetwood's had here, and I wondered if that was going to make him a little too popular for my liking. But apparently some pretty smart guys think he can do well here this week. So I jumped in on him as well. And I talked about that play with Shane Lowry. He was the 5th guy I added. I had Connors on board. I thought he was a good kind of longer shot. I got him at 37-1. Obviously Morikawa, Rahm, those are my shorter shots. And then I went to Lowry and I went to Connor. Lowry was the last guy I added, and I was trying to, figure out where I wanted to go. And it was basically a coin flip with he and Joaquin Niemann, who came in second, by the way, last week in the LIV event to Jon Rahm, and has won twice already on the LIV circuit. I've played him a couple times, I know at least once, in major championships this season. And he's come up, he hasn't even finished top 20 for me. So he's kind of, I've kind of been put off by him a little bit, but I certainly am not ignoring what he's done. And so I ended up going with Lowry, and I pushed Niemann over to the bone pile. And then I heard that some people were on him, and I had already kind of made my case for him. So I said, okay, I'm going to add him too. So Morikawa, Rahm, Lowry, Connors, Dietrich, and then a couple of late additions with Fleetwood and Niemann. I'm sorry, Jeff, I'm not hearing you.
It would help if I unmuted my mic there. I apologize. Couldn't pick up there.
I got you.
I started to say I am one of the biggest fans of Joaquin Niemann prior to this year, and then, heading over to LIV. He was one of the young guns, great with his irons, compared to the Victor Hovlands and a few of the great iron players. And especially when he was on the U.S. tour, I had success prior to this year in a lot of the
Riviera,
majors.
right? I mean,
yes.
That was huge. You win there, that's for real.
I think next year when we're having these conversations, and I'm assuming that we're going to kiss and make up the PGA and LIV, it's going to be a lot more fluid with, the PGA versus the LIV Tour with the cross, and we'll be talking a lot more of how Rahm has really rounded back into form, the Niemanns of the world, and some of the others that have struggled over in LIV, or maybe have had a little success, but have tried to come back here during, for the majors and haven't found that success.
Yeah, I 100% hope you're right. Can't we all just get along? I mean, I sure hope they come together. It's going to be better for golf. It's going to be better for golf fans. It's going to be better for golf bettors. It would be thrilling. There's obviously a lot of logistics to work out, and hopefully that's the biggest hurdle right now, because I think everybody's kind of dying for this thing to be settled, and let's move on. Early
tee time tonight, right? Well, back here
tonight,
in the States.
I want to say around midnight Pacific.
So 3 a.m. like an open for all us back east. So
right.
Either set the alarm or be like me, have a lot of coffee and just stay up and enjoy it. We'll be couch surfing the next few nights here. Next week, Wyndham Championship.
Yeah, this is an exciting time of year, Jeff. And I love how this is really set up, the golf schedule this year. A lot of times after the Open Championship, it kind of dies off for a minute, and the FedEx Cup playoffs kind of don't have that pizzazz that you might normally want, or at least the PGA Tour would want you to feel about. But here come the Olympics with a studded field, star-studded field. And then next week we got the final regular season event for everybody to try and get into that top 70 to make it into the postseason. Johnny Vegas, what a story, by the way, started out the week last week at the 3M Open 149th in the standings, and with the win moved to 66th in the FedEx Cup standings. So bang, he just punched a ticket into the postseason and a few more bucks, and possibly keeps his job. I mean, there's jobs on the line too. So there's really a lot riding. And one guy, a big storyline this year, as far as making the postseason, I'm not sure of his current number, but I don't think he's currently qualified for the second round, when they trim down to the top 50 is, I think you've heard of this guy, Jordan Spieth. Can you believe that? Last year it was Justin Thomas who missed out on the playoffs. This year it's his buddy Jordan Spieth. So some big name guys trying to get into that top 70 and beyond. The Wyndham is a great event because of that finality that it brings. And then you roll into the playoffs and the Tour Championship. So yeah, we've got another month of really good, exciting golf coming up.
So everyone waiting for week 0 in football, hush, hush, hush. We got plenty of golf to come, of course, here. The scroll has been going the whole time, Brady. Everyone here knows where to find you on X at LasVegasGolfer. They can find you work at GolfBet at PGA Tour. Obviously, tonight on the grid, SportsGrid, but as we always finish here, I give you the stage and the mic to tell everyone where to find all your work and your upcoming TV appearances.
Yeah, going a little bit earlier on SportsGrid today. It'll be 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, and then again at 7 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern with Gabe Morency and Cam Stewart, our lovable duo there from Canada. Always a blast with those guys. And then, of course, I'll be on SportsGrid, throughout the rest of the week, over the weekend, that type of thing. Won't have any more articles written at golf.com or PGAtour.com until Sunday when I do my Olympic recap. But a good one that we've referenced a couple times here in the show. A little bit different spin on the prop farm. The prop farm is, we look at a lot of the prop bets each week and speak with the bookmakers. First round leader and head-to-head matchups and some outrights as well. This week, a little bit different where I actually got opinions from bookmakers on who they like personally themselves. Who are they betting on? They have all of that knowledge from behind the counter to see where the public and the sharps and then form their own opinions. So an interesting article there at PGAtour.com under the heading Golf Bet. And I tweeted it out as well at Las Vegas Golfer.
Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, Lou Finicaro, as we get ready for Abu Dhabi. We head over to a big card, big main event. Otherwise, everyone, let's cash some golf tickets, set the alarms, early tee time. Go follow Brady at Las Vegas Golfer. Head on over to SportsGrid, watch them this evening. I'm Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest. Shout out to Noah Frank. Thank you so much, the best producer in the world. We will see you soon.